the Law of Consecration, and I'm Matthew Nelson. And I'm Matthew Nelson. So, uh, the Law of Consecration we learned about in Unit 7, Zion Gathering of Israel and the Law of Consecration, and it relates to, in that unit, major concept number 5, all things common, the united firm, and the Law of Consecration. And I assigned the Law of Consecration to core doctrine because it's found in the scriptures, it's found in uh, the Bible, Book of Mormon, and Doctrine and Covenants. And we are currently asked to follow it through the law of tithing, which I'll talk about it later. And just to summarize what the law of consecration is, DNC 4255 says, "And if thou obtainest more than that which would be for thy support, thou shalt give it into my storehouse, that all things may be done according to that which I have said." And so this is basically saying that anything extra that we have, we should give to the church or give up for the Lord's work. And this doesn't just apply to physical things like money or property, but other things like time and things too. So just be willing to give up all that we have. And some brief history on the law of consecration. Sidney Rigdon was converted, and a lot of his followers were converted with him too. And his group had been living a communal order where basically they shared everything, but it wasn't divinely instituted. It wasn't through modern revelation. So there were a few issues with it. And during this time, a lot of saints were moving to Ohio and Missouri, and lots of them had dropped everything, left everything at more east where they were coming from. So they had little to nothing. And so Joseph Smith received revelation for the law of consecration, and this helped to give people what they needed once they got to Ohio and Missouri. And a scripture I found for this is DNC 51, verse 3. It says, "Wherefore, let my servant Edward Partridge and those whom he has chosen, in whom I am well pleased, appoint unto this people their portions, every man equal according to his family, according to his circumstances and his wants and needs." And then just a quote from the Joseph Smith papers. This is from a book of letters from Joseph Smith. It says, "I proceed to answer your question concerning the consecration of property. First, it is not right to condescend to very great particulars and taking inventories. The fact is this, that a man is bound by law, the law of the church, to consecrate to the bishop before you can be considered a legal heir to the kingdom of Zion. And this too without constraint, and unless he does this, he cannot be acknowledged before the Lord on the church book. Therefore, to condescend to particulars, I will tell you that every man must be his own judge, how much he should receive and how much he should suffer to remain in the hands of the bishop." So he's saying that we have to follow the law of consecration if we want to receive the blessings of Zion, and it's basically an honor system. And here's a talk from Bruce R. McConkie, April 1975, called "Obedience, Consecration, and Sacrifice." He basically talks about the importance of following the law of consecration. He says we must follow it if they are ever to go where God and Christ are and have an inheritance with the faithful saints of ages past. And then the scripture he references is DNC 88:22. "For he who is not able to abide the law of a celestial kingdom cannot abide the celestial glory." So we have to follow this law if we want to go to the celestial kingdom. And he also talks about how we can consecrate our time to study the gospel, and that would be following the law of consecration too. And then another talk by Robert D. Hales in October 2002 called "Tithing, a Test of Faith with Eternal Blessings." He talks a lot about tithing, and for a little bit he talks about its relationship to the law of consecration. He talks about how the early saints, when they didn't keep the law of consecration, they went through a lot of trials and they really struggled when they didn't follow it. And now, instead of uh, the extent of the law of consecration that the saints had back then of giving everything up. We now have the law of tithing, which is supposed to prepare us for when we follow the law of consecration to the extent that the early saints were asked to. And it just asks for 10% of our income instead of giving all of our time, talents, and resources. And then one thing, this academic source talked about how the law of consecration is still in place today. And that is contrary to lots of people's belief. They think the law of tithing replaced the law of consecration, but really the law of tithing is just an adjustment to the law of consecrations. So it's not a lower law, and the law of consecration is not the higher law. It's all a part of the same thing. And then the two key concepts I got from my research on this topic is that the law of consecration asks us to turn wholeheartedly to God and devote our time, money, resources, and talents towards his work. And then the second one is contrary to what some may think, we are still asked to live the law of consecration today through the law of tithing. And the one key takeaway I had from all of my research is we are currently not asked to follow the law of consecration in the form that the early saints were asked to. We currently follow the law of consecration in the form of tithing. As mentioned earlier, the law of consecration is a celestial law, so we must follow it if we want to enter the celestial kingdom. So we should do all that we can to follow the law of tithing to show our faith and devotion to God. Paying tithing will also prepare us if we are ever asked to follow the law of consecration in the form the early saints were asked to follow it. Because if we can't give up just 10% of our income, then how would we be able to devote all of our time, talents, and resources to the work of the Lord?